Hello everybody and welcome to Review Reviews, and today we're diving into the world of Korean cinema. As mentioned in my previous video for Johnnie Cho's Drug War, a very steady escalation, slow build, move thriller, excellent performances, really good story. We have the remake, Korean remake, released in 2018, directed by Lee Hae-young, who has done a small amount of kind of Korean-based movies. This is his first action thriller, and surprisingly this is a remake of Johnnie Cho's film, which is very exciting. I always find it interesting when you get a kind of foreign movie, Hong Kong based kind of film, and you get another foreign based kind of remake of the same story, and to see where those kind of changes and kind of ideals of translate to a different kind of language, a different type of kind of culture, because Hong Kong and Korea very different in terms of how they do their movies, and Korean cinema is so fantastic and so wonderful and so violent. Korean cinema has a very unique kind of flavour to it, has a very unique type of style, very unique type of storytelling with its violence, with its characters, and it's willing to go to those places. Very similar to Japanese cinema with their Yakuza-based movies, and each country, each kind of, type of cinema has their own type of style, has their own type of interesting kind of unique take on the material, and we've seen this a few times with different remakes and different interpretations, and it's very fascinating to see a kind of Korean remake of a Hong Kong based movie and to see what those changes are. So without further ado, let's dive into the world of Believer.
사업을 할 땐 말이야, 제일 중요한 게 사람 가리는 거야. 돈 줄 명줄 거의 다 달렸거든.
Now, Believer is a remake, of course, of Johnnie Cho's Drug War. This is available on Netflix UK, and the reason for this is because there's going to be a sequel, Believer 2, coming out later in the year. This is a Netflix produced kind of finance kind of movie. Obviously the original did so well that Netflix want to cash in on that type of success that film had, and it's from a different director, I believe, this time around. They're keeping the story very kind of hush-hush. There's no trailers out for it yet, but it's meant to be a continuation of the story from Believer. And now, one of the things I wanted to kind of do with this review is establish two things. One, is Believer a solid film by itself? Does it work as a solid thriller without kind of any knowledge of drug wars, or does it work by itself as an actual good entertaining kind of movie? And two, what are the changes and differences and what kind of they've taken from Drug War to make it their own kind of thing? And this film definitely takes the material and does its own thing with it. I'd say Drug Wars is the blueprint. They've taken some of the kind of key points, the key elements, but they've done their own thing with it, and they've added their own kind of changes in terms of the characters, in terms of the time of the twists and reveals. The whole third act of the film is very, very different. They've even taken one of the most interesting elements from the original film and done something very, very different. I'd say Believer takes the ideas, but it's a lot more kind of streamlined, a lot more kind of, more traditional type of thriller. It has kind of, bigger music, it has a bigger kind of cinematography, it has bigger landscapes, it adds more kind of, backstories and kind of motivations for our characters compared to what the original film did. You get to see the explosion in this film on the kind of the drug factory, but that motivation, the reasons behind that, is very, very different compared to what Drug Wars did. This one takes a bigger storyline, has a more of a bigger conspiracy. You have a character called Mr. Lee, who is basically this kind of drug kind of kingpin in Korea, and he is kind of feared and known, very similar to kind of Unusual Suspects, Koza Suse kind of thing, someone that you don't know, someone you've never met, but has control, has power over a lot of what's happening. And there's a lot of rumours, and you've got a very personal angle of our main lead character, our cop character, who basically wants to take him down, and you have more extended scenes, more kind of fleshed out moments between the cop character and the survivor character that is played very different also in this film. In Believer, he's a very young man, he's in his early 20s, he's a very kind of mature, appropriate, kind of well-dressed, well-mannered, very observant kind of character, someone who survived the explosion from the drug factory, and he has to just work with the kind of police detective to try and track down Mr. Lee and to provide details and basically the layout of the kind of shipments and the people and the players that are involved. He's our kind of introduction into that world. It's a very similar beat-by-beat play, but the difference is the way it handles the material is very different compared to what the original was. In this one, it's a lot more louder, it's a lot more kind of in your face, it's a more traditional original. The music is a lot more kind of, you know, slicker, kind of very modern kind of, you know, action thriller kind of thing, where, you know, the tension's high and there's a lot more kind of over dramatic kind of moments where the characters are acting more like psychopaths. These kind of two, you know, drug suppliers that basically are just completely out of the rocker. You know, they're saying the most crazy stuff. They're punching people, they're threatening people. They, you know, they act very much like a crazy person, and, you know, they just have to kind of hope the deal goes right, and then he, obviously the captain character, has to invitate him later on for another deal that's going on in the same hotel under the same kind of, you know, building, which is quite interesting, and kind of see how that kind of plays out. In the original, it's a lot more low key, it's a lot more kind of quiet, it's a lot more kind of softer, but the tension is there kind of thing. You don't need this kind of big loud music, you don't need the kind of the big cinematography or the kind of elaborate kind of sequences. You just have the characters in the moments. It's very grounded, it's very realistic, it's just a very simple how you would do an infiltrate of a... In the original Drug Wars, when the captain has to take cocaine to kind of prove that he is who he is and kind of to demonstrate kind of good faith between the kind of drug supplier, he basically freaks the fuck out. And it's really intense because he's so angry that he's had to do that, and so pissed off that it was like, I don't trust you, I don't like you, why the hell did I have to do that? And he's really freaking out, and it plays it very differently because it kind of almost compromises who he is. In the remake, it's played very differently as well. He does the drugs, but he kind of uses it to his kind of performance, his over-the-top kind of nature with the kind of drug supplier, and, you know, when he has to take that really cold bath to kind of wash out his system, he is still haunted by the death of a character that he's responsible for, kind of a CI that died early on in the process of the film, and that's someone who is still haunts him and motivates him to do what he needs to do. Again, he's still very angry, he's still very pissed off between our kind of informant character, but he kind of does what he needs to do going forward. Its departures within the third act. Both films play it very differently. You know, within the remake Believer, it's played a lot more kind of traditional. It's a lot more kind of, you know, this idea of Kota Susei, this kind of man, the myth, the legend. You know, this kind of Mr. Lee, someone who controls all, who sees all, who has, you know, fear over everyone within the police force units, within the kind of the drug empire, and you've got people that are impersonating him, people pretending to be him, and he's not very happy about that. And this leads up to a very different third act compared to what the original film is. This goes a lot more traditional type of thriller. It's pretty fun, you know, you get a reveal that's pretty okay. It's kind of obvious a little bit. It doesn't quite make a whole lot of sense, but I get it. You know, they have to kind of throw it in there. They're kind of making this kind of like, oh my god, twist kind of thing that you don't see coming, but it's kind of obvious. And while I do appreciate the film going through something a little different, it's obviously setting up something a bit more kind of grander within the kind of, you know, the justice system, and how this character, Mr. Lee, is so epic and so kind of fearful. They definitely want to kind of ride that kind of character on for a little bit. And the ending of the film is very different as well. It ends up being more of a kind of ambiguous type of ending where you don't really know what the outcome is. Overall, I think it does lose its kind of, you know, its energy and its kind of goodwill towards the end of the second act, into the third act. I think the overall kind of third act of the film is very kind of standard. It's not really exciting. It's kind of just kind of loses that kind of energy, that kind of goodwill the film's kind of building up to. I don't think the ultimate reveal and some of the execution of the kind of reveals are particularly that great. I think the action gets a little bit kind of lackluster towards the end. I think it plays all the big moments. It takes the kind of the blueprints and the good stuff from Drug Wars very early on in the film within the first act and second act. I like the changes actually. I like some of the expansions. I like some of the deeper kind of character driven motivations. I like the nice solid kind of, you know, thriller. I think it's a one-off. I don't think it's something that, you know, is going to be highly remembered overall. I think it might be more enjoyable if you haven't seen the original. Maybe your experience and maybe your kind of point of view may be very different compared to which one you seen first. But regardless if I've seen Drug Wars or not, I think the overall kind of impression would still be a one-off. I don't think it's something I'm going to return back to. I don't think it's ultimately anything that different that I've seen compared to other Korean movies within that kind of... While I did enjoy the film and why I do appreciate what the film's trying to go for, I do think Johnnie To's the original Drug Wars is a much better movie overall kind of thing. I think it definitely plays it a lot more low-key, it's a lot more kind of smarter, a bit more grounded, a lot more realistic. I think the characters are a lot more interesting. Sometimes less is more. That's been my thoughts and opinions on Believer, guys. What are your thoughts and opinions on the film? Please comment down below. What is your favourite foreign remake? We're very curious to see your thoughts and opinions, guys. Please comment down below. So in the meantime, guys, I'm through reviews.